2, 3, 4, 5.
Hello lovelies, today we're taking a look at Grey Seas Are Dreaming of My Death by William Hope Hodgson. Trying something new with the recording, going through PDF, seeing if this works at all. You will hear a lot of tapping, probably, and that's the part I'm not so sure about, shall we say. But let's give it a go. So, Grey Seas Are Dreaming of My Death is a William Hope Hodgson RPG, based on his Sargasso Sea stories, primarily, from his various ghost stories and weird tales of the ocean. Hodgson is a very interesting character. He ran away to sea very young, was forced back to land, then left again to go to sea for 8 years in the Merchant Navy. He decided he didn't actually like it very much and came home. He disliked it so much that he wrote many stories about how much he hated it, in the form of monsters and ghosts and other horrors and so on. In fact, he came away hating and fearing the sea so much that he refused naval duty in World War I when that came around. Instead, he did other things. When he wasn't at war or at sea, he became a fitness instructor, a lecturer, a writer. He managed to piss off Harry Houdini by putting his handcuffs on. Wrong. When he did go to war, it was on land. He was injured, then went back to war, and died leading wounded men to safety when he was struck directly by an artillery shell. He was a larger-than-life character, undeservedly overlooked, and a prolific writer of the weird and of ghost stories. Now, there is a corner of gaming amongst which he's recognised, largely thanks to the efforts of Marcus Rowland and Forgotten Futures. If you like your retro future stuff, you can still find that online, but it's a horrendously primitive website. And Rowland is the guy who turned me on to Hodgson via Hodgson's Carnacki series, for which I'll be eternally grateful. I've been writing some sort of sequel stories of my own in the same universe as Carnacki, and Carnacki is known a fair bit, so yeah, but most of that you can thank Marcus Rowland for. Hodgson, outside of gaming circles, may perhaps be better known for his sea stories, in which he expressed his abiding hatred of the sea, in the same way that Lovecraft's reclusive nervousness and bigotry, at least earlier in his life, certainly contributed to and informed and spiced his stories. One must wonder whether, without his bigotry and being such a shut-in, Lovecraft would have been so good of a writer, and one must also wonder whether Hodgson would have been so interesting if he hadn't come to hate the sea so much. It certainly seems to have informed his prolific output of stories and articles. He's also an interesting fellow, Hodgson, because he was very modern. He was very much up on the most modern technology and so on. When he would do lectures, they would include slideshows and things. He was very into his photography. In the Carnacki stories, he talks about radio and electricity and so on, and incorporates those into his horror, into his ghost stories. So they're very much a blend of sort of science and horror. Kind of in the same way, again, comparisons to Lovecraft are impossible to escape. Kind of in the same way that Lovecraft's readings and understanding and interest in science and the cosmos and so on informed him. So, Grey Seas is a role-playing game based around Hodgson's sea stories and gives you a chance to experience the weird horror of his Sargasso seas firsthand. Now, the Sargasso in his stories is not the Sargasso in the real world. It's the mythical version that maybe we still think of when we think of the Sargasso Sea. Whether he helped cement that in the public consciousness or not, I don't know. But many people, when you say the Sargasso Sea, what they think of is this becalmed area of the Atlantic full of seaweed. And to an extent, that's kind of true. Sargassum is plentiful there, but he takes it and dials it up. His Sargasso is a place where the borderlands between this world and others is thin, where the ocean is so thick with weed that you can walk on it, where ships can be lost for centuries tangled up in it, and where strange beasts and inhuman things stalk the crews that are so becalmed. To survive, then, you have to contend with the monsters, the madness, the horror, ghosts, lost gods, and all in the vain hope that one day you might be able to sail free by cutting your way out, or at least that you might survive by finding enough food and water on other empty hulks to keep yourselves alive. Game-wise, as a game, this is a pretty basic sort of game with very broad statistics. Adventures are called shanties, games masters are called the captain, the usual pointless stuff people do to try and evoke a mood, but which never gets used at the actual table. You mostly will play sailors. You might play a landlubber or a castaway or a victim of one of the many horrors on the Sargasso. But your sailors, whatever they are defined by statistics such as salt, metal, brawn, nimbleness, perspicacity, backbone, physique, seaworthiness, and you each get a special action skill. Classes are mostly defined by what kind of sailor you are, and you don't level up per se. Rather, the number of adventures that you survive gradually takes you through layers of experience, which are sort of template upgrades, from your humble beginnings to becoming a tar, a journeyman, a seasoned sailor, a sea dog, and finally an ancient mariner. Brawn is your strength, your might, your muscle. Nimbleness is your agility and dexterity. Perspicacity is general knowledge and reasoning. Backbone is an odd one that I describe as sort of coolness under fire, and it determines initiative, ranged combat, and keeping your shit together when something horrifying happens. Physique is your constitution, effectively. It's used to resist poison or disease, to go without food or water, so on, that sort of thing. Seaworthiness is a general sort of ability, a knowledge of the water and the sea. It's what a sailor knows. It's kind of a catch-all for stuff to do with being a sailor. Salt is your health and toughness. You die if it ever gets to -5. You're knocked unconscious if it reaches 0. It's also a resource you can use to activate certain action skills and can be restored by food and drink. Metal is a pool of luck or determination that you can spend to improve your rolls or to activate certain skills. To use metal on rolls, you have to have failed, but only by a single point, after which you can test your metal to improve your roll by 1, and then after you do that roll, your metal decreases by 1. It doesn't really have much in the way of customization or deeper skills, and that's usually a big problem for me in games like Apocalypse World and so on, where I feel that characters are both too broad and yet at the same instance too vague. The narrow confines of the game's setting here, however, overcome a lot of those issues, because you're all sailors and you're dealing with sailing situations. It doesn't cause as much of a problem as I perceive happening in other games. To make a roll, you check and modify the appropriate statistic, add in some bonuses and penalties, and then roll equal to or under the resulting number on a d20. Starting characters have statistics generally between 7 and 12, so that gives you some idea of the sort of range here. There isn't much of a guide on how much bonus or penalty you should apply in various situations, but the examples are all relatively small numbers. So in play, I wouldn't really expect anything to get modified more than a plus or minus 4. Combat pretty much follows the same sort of pattern, with you rolling to hit, then rolling damage, in a manner to which we're all accustomed. Weapons mostly do relatively small amounts of damage. Cannons do the most, doing a d20 damage, if you even have them on your ship, given you're a merchant vessel. Otherwise, it's 1d2 through to about 1d10. Weapons have types, like slashy and pointy and crunchy. That's the worst Disney dwarves ever. And creatures have distinctions, so that certain weapons either do a point of bonus damage against a certain kind of creature, or they do normal damage, or they're penalised and only do half damage against that sort of creature, depending what weapon you're using and what their distinctions are. Enemies don't roll to attack, you roll to avoid their attacks. Yeah, it's just kind of a trend in game design. But it does make things a little bit awkward if you end up in a PvP situation, since the rules aren't really cross-compatible in that way, but it's nothing you can't improvise around. It is a little odd that creatures follow very different rules to characters, but I guess if we can handle it in Morkborg, we can handle it here. Some of the items have a bit of a Fallout bent to them in some ways. Reading a book or a set of magazine articles or whatever can improve your stats, and there's a nice nod to Hodgson's fitness work in that. Certain items can provide bonuses to certain kinds of checks or to the capabilities of certain weapons. There's the basis there if you wanted to improvise around it. If you're into your dungeon cooking, you'll find plenty of food and drink items, some of which can be made from the monsters you encounter. Some people are really into that lately. T-shirt, I'm looking at you. Just stay clear of the mushrooms, eh? The ship rules are a bit rudimentary, but it's not really about ships clashing on the high seas or, unleashing your cannons on the Kraken or whatever. This is much more about personal horror. The ship is something you need to maintain and look after so you can all survive, and that's really all you need. There's a decent bestiary here and a sample shanty. So it's got everything. Now, obvious as we've been looking at the book is probably that the layout is not really anything special or interesting, and the artwork is nothing really special or interesting. While it's of the time and kind of cool in that way, I can't help but feel that this would have been vastly improved by some actual custom proper artwork and a better presentation. Even just a 2-column layout would do an enormous amount of good for it. I'm stoked to see another William Hope Hodgson game book out there, something that people can play, and I think it does a good job of making the creatures horrifying and all of that. The rules just lack a bit of depth or guidance, and that's the other problem that I would have. And I also think the game could do with being expanded a bit more beyond Hodgson's work. Like I've included a clip from Bad Travelling from Love, Death and Robots. It's a very good episode, horrifying, that you should watch. But also there's Vandermeer's work, China Mayville's The Scar would be another good source of inspiration. Hodgson did influence a lot of other people. People like Lovecraft were aware of him, so you will find themes and motifs and so on across a lot of weird fiction. And maybe I feel a connection to these stories as well because, I don't know, there's something uniquely British in our love of the sea. We're never that far away from it. It features hugely in our history. The Royal Navy is still held in high regard, despite being stripped back to the bone. You know, there's a lot to Britain's relationship with the sea, and I think it certainly helps feed my connection to it. I used to be as fascinated by the sea as I used to be with space, and would eat up anything about coral reefs or deep ocean exploration, things like that. And certainly reading through this, looking at the monsters and everything, I felt stirred and interested, and like I want to play it, and like I want to go back and read Hodgson's other works, his oceanic horror, his pelagic terror. But there is no getting past the fact that presentation-wise, this is not a very good product in that sense. So let's give it some scores then. So style-wise, it visually a 1, I think. And while it is a bit too focused on the rules, the parts where it does go into Hodgson's past and respect for him, I have to respect that. I do think a lot of the writing and the quotations that are taken out speak to the horror and make it interesting, but it's just massively let down by the visual presentation, and I think that's a huge shame. So I can't give it more than a 2 for style. Just a better presentation would elevate the entire thing, and some rules changes to reward people for improvising and doing weird and special things on their turns. That would also massively improve it. More guidance, more ideas on how to deal with player ingenuity. Sure, you can improvise. Any GM can always improvise with any system, but it would be nice to have a bit more. Let's put it that way. In terms of substance, it's a complete rule set. There's an adventure, all of that jazz. It's complete, but it could do with a bit more. I think rather than the adventure, I would rather have had one of Hodgson's short stories included in the back. I think that would do more to establish the mood and sense of the game than anything else would, really. But they've not chosen to do that. Instead, there's an adventure. But you know how I feel about adventures, that they're almost always a waste of time when it comes to these books. But yeah, it's a shame. But it is a complete game. So, 2 for style, 3 for substance. Because, it is all there. I would want more, though, really. So that only gives it a 5 out of 10, or a 2.5 out of 5, which is not good, right? 3 is out of 5 is an average score, so it's less than average. But it's all really down to the presentation, and despite all that, the PDF is like $8, I think. You can get it from what is it called? The Nacho something. I'll include a link down below. Here we go. Nachocomics.com. Nachonomics, as in economics, but with nachos. Nachonomics.com. That's where you can get it. Yeah, it's like $8 for the PDF. The physical book is probably too expensive, given what we have here at $19. But as a PDF, it's probably worth picking up, I would think. So even though I've given it a low score, I'm saying you probably should pick it up, because it is inspiration. It might turn you on to William Hope Hodgson, and that's worth the entry price, I think, as well. But there you go. Underwhelming presentation of good content and good ideas. Zang.
Ars Goetia presents classical demonology for OSR games. If you like your magic to have a little authenticity, if not reality, then Ars Goetia will give you all the tools necessary to bring classical, ritual magicians and demonologists into your OSR games.
Down before your eyes. The actors screaming agonizing cries. Another useless reason to despise. The secret life that everyone's nice. The secret life that everyone's nice. The secret life that everyone's nice. You're a star now. You go far now. In the Nero Daughter Show. In the Nero Daughter Show. You're on stage now. Disengage now. In the Nero Daughter Show. In the Nero Daughter Show. Nero Daughter Show.
I can make it happen. I can get you anything you want. You just have to talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man. The Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it. You even think it. You can have it.